Welcome to Humanities in the Wild, Stargazing and Poetry. My name is Sunny Wilkinson and I'm the moderator for tonight. And I am so excited for this event. It's been in the works for a few months. And I'm just thrilled that I've been able to bring together three people who are so prestigious in their field and share their talents with us and help us get ready for some really spectacular stargazing for the summer. I wanted to start with thanking our sponsors. We have several for tonight. The Center for Community Engaged Learning, or CECL, at Weber State University. They've been wonderful. The Planetarium at Weber State University, the Ogden Astronomical Society, Weber Book Links, and Utah Humanities. Huge thank you to Utah Humanities for helping fund this. They do so much for our state. And especially Willie Paloma for his help with the literary events. So many, many thanks to him, and he's doing our technical stuff tonight, so I'm extra thankful for him. This is actually being recorded, just to let you know, so hope that that's okay with you. I would love to take some questions at the end. We'll have a brief Q&A after all of the presenters have gone, and would love to gather some of your questions. So drop them into the chat at any point, and I will go to those after we're done and read those questions and turn them over to the appropriate presenters. So if you have anything, go ahead and put it in the chat. I wanted to take a minute to introduce our three presenters. As I said, just kind of to set this up, I went snowshoeing in North Fork Park with my husband several months ago, and we went by moonlight, and it was very romantic. And I thought, I would love to know more about dark sky parks and about stargazing and finding out more about meteor showers and kind of find out the prime places and the prime times to stargaze. And then I thought about my good friend Natalie Taylor, who has some beautiful poetry about the night sky, and it just clicked. So I'm so excited that this has come together tonight. Just a little reminder, make sure that you're on mute just throughout the presentation. And then at the end, actually, if you'd rather unmute and ask a question instead of do chat, you're welcome to do that too. So to introduce our three presenters tonight, we have Dr. Stacy Palen. She was born in Pennsylvania and then lived all over the country before she moved to Utah to join the physics department at Weber State University in 2002. As a professional astronomer, she has used telescopes of all kinds all over the world to investigate how stars like the sun die. She handed over the Planetarium to the current director in 2019 and now runs a research telescope on the roof of Tracy Hall, which grants live access to undergraduate students from as far away as Wisconsin. It's really cool. She is also a published author and has a small farm west of Ogden with her husband, caring for horses, dairy goats, chickens, turkeys, and so many zucchini. So if she didn't seem like a rock star first, that last part, that's pretty cool. So we're so excited to have Stacy. Another presenter is Jeremy Bryson. He is also a professor at Weber State University. He teaches in the geography department, or geography, environment, and sustainability at Weber State University. While he teaches a number of different courses, his favorites are people and places of the world. That sounds really good. Urban geography and geography of Utah and the American West. Outside of the classroom, he likes to work with students on research projects. Wow, bless your heart, that sounds hard. Travel with student groups and generally help students to appreciate the wonder of the world around them. When he's not teaching, he enjoys hanging out with his wife and three kids, pampering his small flock of backyard chickens, and losing himself in a good audiobook while rowing on his rowing machine. I have to say, the last sentence of every bio has been my favorite. And then the last is Natalie Taylor, our poet. Natalie earned a BFA in English with a creative writing emphasis from the University of Utah. She is the author of the poetry chapbook, Eden's Edge, and her work has been published in 15 Bites, Hubbub, Hunger Mountain, Kettle Blue Review, New Ohio Review, Rock and Sling, Swim Every Day, and Talking River. She won first place in the 2016 Utah Original Writing Competition and was named a 2017 Marie Sandow's Emerging Writer. And Natalie is also a wonderful gardener. an outdoors person. So grateful to know. So thank you so much for Stacy, Jeremy, and Natalie. And this, we're going to kind of break things up. We're going to have poetry in between each segment. So we'll start with Natalie, and then she's going to read a few poems, and then we'll have Jeremy enlighten us about dark skies. And then Natalie will pop in and do a little bit more poetry, and then we'll move to Stacy and end with Natalie, and we'll go to that point. So take it away, Natalie.
Great, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for that introduction. I love those bios. And thank you also so much to Utah Humanities, Weaver's Diversity, Planetarium for hosting this and sponsoring it. And a special thank you to Sunny for organizing it and promoting it and getting everything together. And yeah, I really appreciate being here. I'm honored to be with Lynn and Dr. Bryson. I was in the desert just a couple of weeks ago and had the chance to see a sky without any light pollution. And I looked up and I thought, you know, we're missing so much with the light pollution to encourage dark skies. And I also want to learn so much about the constellations. Every time I look up, I think I want to learn more. There's so much going on in this. The biggest event that we had here was over the holiday season. And it was when it's the closest visible conjunction between the two giant planets, Saturn and Jupiter. It's the closest they've been in 800 years, and they nicknamed it the Christmas star. So I'll start with that. Winter solstice 2020. Jupiter and Saturn closer than they've been since the Middle Ages. Swing on the puny hurricane with famine and war and plagues. How many drinking from a Dom Perignon fountain? How many grubbing over gritty water? A celestial shindig of tilts and orbits arriving right 800 years later. Saturn's lightning storms create giant clouds of soot that blacken thunderstorm alleys. After it falls the span of 2.5 Earths, soot solidified graphite, then diamonds. Diamond rain melting to sea. Jupiter's 1,000,000 megawatt aurora escorted by Io's 400 volts. Now they're dancing to the compressed heart of an old star, a 10 billion trillion carat cosmic diamond that pulses like a gong. Maybe not much has changed since the last time they rolled in together. Trolls still digging for buried treasure, when all the dazzle, methane and crystallized carbon pores transformed to brilliance, like off, look up. The title of this next poem is borrowed from Homiliad. My own fickle desire, like a rat scuttling across the street, registers as movement before form. Smoke from a neighbor's cigarette, skunk trailing a few houses down, robins chittering in a too warm winter. All my senses firing stubborn in perception as the super blue blood moon looms, ruddied from an eclipse, just 223,820 miles from the Earth. A lunar trifecta unset in 1982, like the big love I'm looking for, tempered by clouds. So in 2019, I started writing a poem on every full moon, and unbeknownst to me, it ended up being a chronicle of my experience through the pandemic. All of these moon poems are named after the Farmer's Almanac names, which took theirs from Native American and colonial and other traditional sources that have been passed down through the generations. And so each poem is simply a little vignette of whatever I was seeing or whatever was happening, at the time. So let's start with Cold Moon, December 12th, 2019, where all that falls from a stone's dark side, moss grows, a tally of infractions. In a hospital gown, my sister lifts the red arm of her premature infant and gently rinses the creases. She pours warm water over a fleece blanket, keeping her daughter swaddled as she rubs one scrawny limb at a time, cups her head inside her palm. Neither have the strength to leave. But as they look into each other, both hearts monitored, their blood surges in a synchronized tide. Pearled sliver on the floor, the moon pulls. Snow Moon, February 9th, 2020. Where we had shoveled tunnels to get to the car and throw out garbage, waist-high piles, trails to the bird feeder and the dog's daily route. But the day of the supermoon rose clear and blue. If you walked past the cafe and saw us, you would think nothing. A mother and daughter eating sandwiches, buying chocolate. But oh, after so much cold quiet, melting. Maybe one more before we break? Warm Moon, March 9th, 2020. Clouds stacked for brilliance. The plan. Watch the supermoon rise over the lake. We drove as far from the city as we could and perched on a rock slab, unpacked olives and feta. But as the air cooled, color leached, as if COVID-19, an indiscriminate and ravenous gene whirling the globe, could subdue even the sky. Sunset pale. Black swifts darted, flapped erratically, cottage, stock market plummeting. Quarantined people tunneling in dim space. Moon rose behind velvet gray clouds, softening the future of what we could not possibly see.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Natalie. Okay, Jeremy, teach us all about dark skies.
Okay, we'll see how this goes. Can you everyone see a black screen right now? Perfect. Well, first of all, Natalie, thank you for turning our attention toward the skies, and I'm really fascinated by that by your full moon project. That's great. I appreciate that. And about those introductions, if I could add one thing to my introduction. This actually just happened today, and so I would have written it otherwise, but my kids were very impressed with me today, and so who knows, maybe some of you will be also, probably not. But today at Taco Bell, I was brave enough to try the limited edition potato Rito. So my kids thought that was maybe one of the most amazing things I've ever done. So hopefully all of you are dutifully impressed as well. But I'm really happy to be here and to be able to talk about dark skies, because dark skies really they mean a lot to me, and I'll share with you a couple of things. So first of all, oh, there you go. There's this guy. I'm going to introduce kind of a couple of characters as we're getting started today. So in case you were wondering, this is me. And I'm thinking probably 12 years old, And at this time, I was living in Florida, but I had the opportunity to come out and spend a week on Lake Powell. And so this was the really kind of my first experience out there, really probably the farthest away from traditional civilization that I'd probably ever been in my life up to that point. And so I don't remember a lot of things about this trip, but I do remember one night, and I saw something that I've never been able to forget. I can't unsee the thing that I saw that night as I lay on top of this houseboat, seemingly in the middle of nowhere. Everything seemed right, and I swear that I saw every star in the sky, every star that there possibly could be in the sky. And I had never seen anything like that before. And that stuck with me. Okay. Second character of the day. This is Jonathan. And so here we are. He is at this point. This is one of my kids, Jonathan. At this point, this was, I believe, in 2014, and we were traveling. We were at the Grand Canyon, and so this trip was a great trip, and I'm sure he enjoyed it. But he after this trip. I had him, I don't know, maybe I was watching him one day and trying to keep him busy, but I asked him to write or kind of draw something that he remembers from our trip. And this is what he drew. So you can see in this picture, he has a lot going on. You can see him. I assume that's him. He's smiling very big. We were camping. You can see a fire. Our fire wasn't actually larger than our tent, no worries. But the thing that really caught my attention was all of this stuff going on up here. And I remember this relatively well. I remember taking him out. And this was, I don't like to keep my kids up too late into the night because I'm just kind of a selfish parent like that. But I took him out that night, and we kind of walked around the campground, and we looked up at the stars there at the Grand Canyon, and we sat out there for a while, and it was a memorable experience. Again, and he saw it also as a memorable experience. Okay, so character 3. This actually is a bunch of characters. So also in the fall of 2014, I took a group of students out to North Fork Park, and you can see we took this picture, and then I had them write about their experiences as we were out in North Fork Park that evening. And so I am pulling out 3 of these responses. One student said, "I saw 2 shooting stars in the Milky Way, and it made me ecstatic. I'm a person who hasn't spent very much time outside a city, so I don't take the night sky's beauty for granted." So we had someone that hadn't been outside all that much, and again, like my experience as a 12-year-old, was marveled at the sky. Second second student says, "I'm used to being under the dark sky, especially on the Navajo reservation, completely removed from modern society and light pollution. It was wonderful to see Andromeda and the Pleiades." This student had spent a lot of time, as she said, under the dark sky. But again, being able to revisit those skies and to see the constellations that she was familiar with, again, it meant something. And then this last student said, "This trip has changed the way I see the night sky." And I love all of those because they all have different experiences, but I love this last one. It changed the way I see the night sky. And that, I think, is what excites me about dark skies and dark skies conservation. Helping people to change the way that they see the night sky. So let's back up for just a minute, and we'll talk a little bit about dark skies and light pollution, and kind of get some foundations, and then maybe we'll revisit these characters a little bit later in this presentation. So, first of all, what is light pollution? Because this is again foundational stuff. So there are a couple of different types of light pollution I just want to introduce really quickly. First one here, we have light trespass. And this one is just like what it sounds like, where light goes where it's not supposed to. That light trespasses. And you can see some of these images where you have these exposed bulbs and they are shining onto these kind of opposed buildings. And you can imagine that the people perhaps in these rooms here may not appreciate having this light shining into their house, and the same sort of thing goes here. This is light trespass is important to me right now, and my wife who's here can confirm this. I complain almost every night about our backyard neighbors whose lights, I swear, shine directly onto our bedroom window. So anyway, that's just a thing I have. We have another type of light pollution, is glare. And this is excessive brightness that causes visual discomfort. And you can see that some of these outdoor lights, again, if they're too bright, if they're too much, they can cause, I mean, it can be a safety hazard for sure, and it can be a source of discomfort. And again, if you've ever driven around with me at night, you know that I like to point out lights that are too bright and a lot of glare. So you're getting the idea that I am not all that fun in the evening time when it comes to light. And then this last type, and perhaps maybe this is kind of the most important for kind of our purposes here today, this idea of sky glow. And this is where we have the night sky, which brightens simply due to overlighting, wasted light that reflects back out and then obscures our view of the night sky. You can see a couple of these fairly dramatic images, but honestly, it's a fairly dramatic phenomenon. Here, this is overlooking Salt Lake Valley. You can see that there are some clouds here, and they're catching the light of Salt Lake City. And then on this other side, perhaps you've seen this as you've approached perhaps a city in the distance after you've been driving, perhaps out in the desert and approaching a city, and you can see when the city is approaching. That's this dome, this light dome. And that signifies that we have a kind of a source of wasted light. And so you can imagine being under this light dome and how much your view of the stars would be obscured. So we have a couple of different types of light pollution. So where is this light pollution? As you might guess, it's kind of where people live. That's where we see light pollution. This is a global perspective. And so if you didn't know what kind of map this was, you might think this is a pretty decent representation for what kind of a global population map might look like. It wouldn't be perfect for sure, but it's a decent representation. And so you can see the places that are in kind of yellows and reds tend to be places where there's the most light pollution. And the places that are in darker, kind of the black colors, this is where you see very little light pollution. And if we zoom in a little bit closer, we can see what this looks like in the United States. And again, it represents a population map. There are fewer people living in more clustered settings in the American West than we see in other places. And so you see more of these large dark spaces here. And if we zoom in just one more level, we can see Utah. So you can see very clearly the Wasatch Front, and basically you can follow I-15 until you get down to St. George. And so where people live in large numbers, that tends to be where you find more light pollution. And so that probably tracks with the way that you think this might work. If we're looking at light pollution as a trying to kind of measure what light pollution could look like after you're looking up into the sky. There are a number of different ways to measure this. And one of these ways, this is the Bortle scale. And so it goes from all the way up to 9, where you're seeing the most washed out landscape, skyscape, I suppose, where you see highest levels of light pollution, and you're not able to see any stars, maybe 1 or 2. And as we kind of go farther down this Bortle scale, eventually you begin to see the Milky Way and begin to see certain constellations until you get to these kind of places 1 and 2. These are those, again, kind of dark spots on the map where you're able to have greatest access to seeing the night sky. And one of the things I think it's important to remember, and I find myself often forgetting this, is that if we were to remove light pollution, so if we were to take away our bright suburban skies or our city skies, if we were just to turn off those lights, we would see, like, the stars are there, the sky is there, it is obscured. And so this is light pollution really is, I think, one of the easiest types of pollution in the world to cure. You simply turn off the lights. I recognize it's not as easy as that, but that would surely cure this issue. So what do we do? Because I recognize we can't turn off all of the lights. That's not a reasonable solution. So what do we do? Great news is that we have the International Dark Sky Association, and this is the leading organization that's interested in preserving and conserving the night sky. And so you can see their logo down in the bottom right here. And so the IDA, they recommend a handful of relatively straightforward solutions. So we have one, to light only what you need. It seems as easy as that. Why would we want to send our light up into the night sky? Because honestly, we don't need light there. We need light on the ground. We need light, again, where we as humans, we're lighting for humans. And so we need to light where humans need that light. And so light only what you need. Here, at number 2, they're offering us, again, an important solution. Use energy efficient bulbs. Again, perhaps this graphic is a little dated. These aren't necessarily the most energy efficient ones that we're looking at here as represented. But then only light as bright as you need. Why spend more lumens or kind of watt equivalents on something that needs lighting? Why light more than you need to? And then perhaps, honestly, one of the most, probably the most important one, as I see it, is to shield lights and direct them down. And I'll show you some images of what this can do. But the reasoning behind this is pretty straightforward. And if we're trying to put light where we need it and not up into the sky, simply putting a hood over our light and directing it down to where we need it makes a lot of sense. Why have this exposed bulb that shines everywhere around it when we could direct that light down toward the ground where we need it? This 4th point, only use light when you need it. And this one makes good sense as well. Perhaps we don't need to be lighting everything all night long. There's a lot of, again, great lighting strategies that light until late into the evening, but perhaps not at 3 a.m. Maybe perhaps everything doesn't need to be lit at its full volume. Perhaps we could dim some of those lights or turn them off when they're not needed. And then this last one, choose warm white light bulbs. And these, and so you can see this if you're looking at a lamp. And it has a yellowish hue to it. That tends to be better for being able to observe the night sky. Lights that are very bright white those tend to be worse. So these are relatively, as I see it, relatively straightforward things that we can take a look at. And to visualize some of this, this is, I think it's a pretty decent simulation here. Light pollution simulator version 1.0. So we have this, this place. They're looking to light this house and this field, and so how are you going to do it? So we have option one, where you have a couple of lanterns here, and they are fully exposed bulbs, and these are going everywhere. Again, some of the light is heading down to the ground, which is where you need it, and a lot of it is heading up and around and other places where it's perhaps unnecessary. Option number two, we're getting a kind of partially shielded effect, whereas before we had a completely unshielded bulb. Now we have partially shielded. I don't know if you can see, but there's some sort of cap on these lanterns, and that helps. You can see we're not sending quite as much up into the night sky, but we still are we're still kind of obscuring plenty of this night sky. We go for option three, where again we now have a fully shielded bulb. Again, it's not perfect. It's not the same thing that we are seeing in this top image, but this is significantly better. We're lighting where we need it, and we're not lighting excess things. So here we are. We're back at our three characters. Let's see what our three cast of characters have done after they've had these experiences. You remember their stargazing experiences earlier on at the beginning of this presentation. So we'll kind of go from right to left. That's how we'll work. So that kid over on the right, that was at Lake Powell. Again, that's me. What did I do? I changed the lights on my house. So we moved into this house a few years ago, and it had these kind of carriage lanterns out by the garage. And I'm sure that they were fine lanterns. But what did they do? Again, we had kind of a partial cap here, but really we had a lot of light that was spreading out where we didn't particularly need that light. And so I am not an electrician at all. Like, I've done two things in my life with electricity. This is one of them. And so I went to Lowe's and bought a different set of lamps that had the IDA approved sticker on them. Literally, there is a sticker on the box that says these are dark sky friendly fixtures approved by the International Dark Sky Association. So I slapped those things on there, and all of a sudden light goes just where we need it. And so again, a small thing that's worked out relatively well. And in fact, after we did this, one of our neighbors down the street also did theirs. So it's a real trend. So get it started in your neighborhood. Second, so we have that group of students. And so that group of students, again, working with me, but that group of students over the next couple of years, we began working with great people in Ogden Valley to work to help North Fork Park become an accredited International Dark Sky Park. So this is a fairly rigorous application process, where we had to go around the park at night, and we had these handheld readers, sky quality meters, and we hold them up to the sky, and it measures how dark the sky is, or how bright the sky is, but effectively how dark the sky is. And so we all around the park, we began making these measurements, and you can see we have all these places we went. And so we went in 2013, we went in 2014, we took down all of these measurements. And then, being budding geographers, we, this group of students and I, we put these obviously on a map because that seems really important for geographers to do. And so you can see we're getting these readings. And just to kind of orient you for just a moment, so in order to become a dark sky, an International Dark Sky Association dark sky park, you have to have at least kind of a reading in magnitudes per square arc second. I assume that means something to you. It doesn't mean a ton to me. Probably means more to Stacy than it does to me. But in this unit, you had to have at least 20 it had to be a darkness that was above 20. So kind of the higher the number, the darker the sky. And so we were getting these readings that were well above 20. So we were excited about this, recognizing that we had kind of dark enough skies so that we would be able to qualify as a international dark sky park. And so then finally, again, working with a number of great individuals and talented and excited individuals in Ogden Valley, we put together this proposal to become an international dark sky park. And so by 2015, North Fork Park became the third dark sky park in the state of Utah. And so you can see this map here, and kind of we have now a listing, but all of these places on this map are international dark sky parks. And I have listed here kind of all of them basically in the order in which they became dark sky parks. And so you can see that we had Natural Bridges really early on, the first dark sky park that the International Dark Sky Association accredited. So they have incredible skies all the way back to 2006. And then we have Halvan-Weep National Monument in 2014. And then we have North Fork Park in 2015. And this was, it was exciting. We were kind of on the, I felt on the cutting edge of a lot of, I think, pretty exciting things happening around the state. And so there were, again, some really talented and excited individuals in Ogden Valley that really helped a lot of these other state parks and other parks become, get started on this process of becoming dark sky parks. And so you can see how fairly quickly 2015, 2016, again, 2018, we had a handful. And so every year we're having a couple more, and 2021 has been a big year so far for these parks to become dark sky parks, all the way down to Kodachrome Basin State Park most recently. And so if you are ever in the mood for seeing dark skies, head on over to the International Dark Sky Association. There's a little button that says Find Me a Dark Sky Park. And so you click that and you will get all sorts of places that are accredited as dark sky parks. And then the last piece that I have for you here. This is now Jonathan. He is no longer 6 years old. Now he is 12 years old, and he is visiting North Fork Park, an international dark sky park, in order to do his 6th grade science fair project. And so he went around measuring light pollution at elementary schools in the area. And so you can see him out there in the middle of the parking lot. You can say, wow, that's a lot of light in that parking lot. Again, once you kind of see light pollution, it's hard to not see it. You can see other places where lighting was excellent. And again, we weren't sending a lot of light up into the atmosphere. You can see other places, again, there were very poor lighting, and then other places that were excellent lighting. There are, this is the very last thing I want to show you here. You can see some of the differences. This is the kind of the final map that he put together for his science fair project. And you can see that we have one school that is very near to North Fork Park. That is Snowcrest Junior High. Had very poor lighting, and their sky quality meter lighting levels were very low, meaning you couldn't see very many stars at all. Just down the street, you have Valley Elementary with very good lighting, where you could see almost as much as you can at North Fork Park. And so the impact that we have at our kind of individual level is important. And so how, finally, do we, how can we change the way we see the night sky? There are lots of ways to do it. But I think the first step is to just have a sense of wonder about the night sky. After that, learning about the sky and how we can protect it and conserve it, and then act. Do something relatively simple that will help to lower our light pollution limits. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jeremy. Congratulations on the park. That's so cool. And I love that there are stickers. You know, you can buy a light fix for this. And I love how some of those ideas are pretty easy. That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
So I'm going to read 6 more poems and I'll be safe. Pink Moon, April 7th, 2020. On a Zoom happy hour, one friend shows us the mask she sewed with skeletons skateboarding on black fabric. Another friend tells her to layer 3 coffee filters under it when she goes. In the morning, other people walking their dogs are dark shapes on empty streets, headlamps, and reflective gear bobbing under moon shadow. I can't unsee the news. New York may bury dead in a mass grave. Chinese doctors in white spacesuits with blue seams, hip packs, and respirators like welders' masks, huddled and found, are falling off the hospital bed. I miss my dad. Leave packets of sweet peas for my mom, text her to wear gardening gloves, and try to eat where I am. When will I see my parents again? I have conjunctivitis, pink eye. So many difficult truths I don't want to see. Outside of grocery stores enforcing 1 package of toilet paper per customer. Free cart sanitizing stations, empty of sanitizer. Less than 1 moon ago, I looked into your eyes and saw my soulmate. I failed to see the crack in our foundation. What I forced myself to see 2 nights ago, another woman in your bed. What shelter did you see in her eyes you did not see in mine? Flower Moon, May 7th, 2020. Virus blooms. 3 red foxes. 1 trots across the field, gopher and jaw. Nesting crows in the looming pine racket all day. White owl dream swoops between dawn and dusk. Fire and sour lemon cake. Quarantine tally. What's gained? Check the phone. What's gone? Fairy trees. A mask. Rage rises. An electric clarifying orb. Buck Moon, July 4th, 2020. I am the always lost, ignoring desert cairns. I am the always broken, confused by tea leaves and sunsets and owls calling up the moon. I'm waking early to shake rage like an old dog shakes off dreams of butterflies. I am the always needy, after the gratitude, a valley of wishes. You, great spirit, laugh it off, shrug. Send another pair, silent in the field I walk past every day, ears taller than velvet over milk thistles. Sturgeon Moon, August 3rd, 2020. Jagged fears break the surface like toothy spine. The old ways of being no longer serve. More people are suffering than not. Equalizing virus demands the whiskers of inquiry prod the flow that we've changed, drifting from late Cretaceous to another epoch, spinning in summer's long grass like a relic species, eye level to pumpkin vines and potatoes, bees in the marigold shocked into surrender. Heat waves remind me time is up. Corn Moon, September 2nd, 2020. The pianist in an N95 mask plays Fly Me to the Moon on a rickety wooden upright out next to a park where a man sits in an orange pumpkin carriage, jostling it from side to side for his kids. Fat grasshoppers pop, the elderly drive along the curb, pausing to collect brown paper sacks from a volunteer and donating $4. And the in-car outdoor concert sounds like a kernel of endurance in autumn's melon. Beaver Moon, November 30th. 2020. The tent without plaza with a trolley sags like a waiting sail. Next tree over, rust-hued tent, failed Home Depot bucket, scattered toiletries, rags. People sun in sleeping bags as traffic currents around them. More migrating from shelters downtown, busy gathering whatever can be deemed practical enough to stave off winter's deep bite.
Thank you so much, Natalie. I love this project that you're doing. Sorry, are you still going? The sound was cutting out just a teeny bit. Okay, I love this project. I love the idea of capturing your life in each full moon. I think that that's so reflective just of what's happening with each of us, and that you can. Okay, sorry, I haven't, this has happened in every Zoom meeting I've ever been in. My finger wanders and all of a sudden I'm muted. But thank you to Natalie so much. I love this project, and just capturing each full moon and how it reflects your life, I think is just so magical. So thank you so much. And I wanted to make sure that we added poetry to this because the night sky is so empowering and inspiring to artists. And I think it's important not just for the science part of things, but also to be able to appreciate what it does for our imaginations and for the artistic side of us. So thank you so much, Natalie. And we're going to turn it over to Stacy Palen now, who is going to teach us a little bit more about how to stargaze.
Good evening. Let me go ahead and I will share my screen. So you should now see a window that has in it a horizon, which is very bent because of the way I have it all set up, and then it has the moon in it. So at this time of year, the sun is setting quite late. It sets after 9 o'clock now, or close to, and it doesn't really get dark until well after 9 o'clock. Astronomical twilight, astronomers are very picky about what we call dark, and that comes quite late after the sun goes down. I wanted to share with you today not only how to look at the stars and the constellations, but maybe kind of a plan, a roadmap for how to learn more about them. The way that I do it is every year I pick a new constellation that I don't know anything about yet, or maybe I've learned a few things here and there in my lifetime, but I don't know it in detail. And then I go and I learn about that constellation. And what I'll do is I'll learn how to find it. And then I'll learn about the astronomy objects in it. What kind of stars are there? What kind of galaxies? What kinds of big clouds of dust and gas? What time of year can I see it? That kind of thing. And then I will go and I'll learn a story about that constellation. And I do that because I think of the astronomy information, all that information about the kinds of stars that we can see and the kinds of objects as being connecting to the future. And learning the stories about the constellation connect me to the past. And so I can draw this line between what ancient peoples thought about that place in the night sky and draw a line through today to what future people are going to know about that place in the night sky. And it helps me kind of center myself in time in a way that I have not found any other way to do that that's quite so satisfying. So first, though, what I want to do is tell you a little bit about this program. This is called Stargazing, and it's a free open source piece of software that runs on any platform, and it's unusually easy to install for open source software, and it's also unusually robust and rarely, if ever, crashes, although now that I've said that, we can anticipate a crash this evening. So the first thing that I want to do is here in Stargazing, we have the horizon, and this is just some random horizon in Iowa or somewhere. And we're looking towards the south in this picture. This is right now, this time of day here. And you can see that the sun is still way over here on the western horizon, getting ready to go down. The moon is up. And what I can do now is come down. If I mouse over, if I mouse over in the bottom or on the left side, I get these little buttons that I can push where I can change things. So the first thing that I'm going to do is move it so that I stop pulling up my Mac dock every time I go down there. Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is change the time. So I'm going to click on the date time window and I'm going to run the time forward. So here's the date, 2021, May 15th. That's today. And 7:54 p.m. Is the time. And so I'm going to push this up arrow and that's going to change the time. And watch what happens to the moon when I do that. What do you expect it to do? Let's see if it does that. Okay, so there now we're at 8:54, 9:54, and that's pretty good, right? We've got darkness now. So that's what we really wanted to get to. So at just about 10 o'clock tonight, this is what the sky will look like. And you notice that the moon went from here in the sky off towards the west as time went by, just as you would expect. It's awesome, right? The sky does what you think. And of course it does what you think because the earth is spinning around its axis. So the earth's going the other way. The sky looks like it goes that way. So whenever I learn about a new constellation, the very first thing I want to know is, how do I find this thing, right? How do I find this thing in the sky? So I always begin not by looking toward the south, because when you look towards the south, the sky is changing all year long. But if we come around and we look towards the north, we have a sky that changes, but not as much. So this part of the sky that's up in the northern part towards the north, it just goes around in a circle. So once you know the constellations that are close to the northern part of the sky, you can see them any time of year. You can see them in the winter, you can see them in the summer, you can see them in the spring and the fall. So it's a super easy way to be really impressive, because no matter what time of year you go out, you can find the Cassiopeia, and then you can tell people about it. And they will be so impressed because they'll think, that's amazing. How did they even know that? Here it's summertime. Oh, it's wintertime. Oh, it's springtime. And still, yes, here is Cassiopeia. So most people can find the Big Dipper. So here we have the Big Dipper in the night sky. Looks like this. We have 3 stars that make the handle. We have a cup of the handle, or a cup of the dipper, excuse me. This constellation, it turns out, is super important in American history. And it's super important. There was an entire song about it called Follow the Drinking Gourd. And this song, slaves trying to escape the South sang it to each other. And it was a roadmap for how to follow the Underground Railroad to get to the north of the country in order to escape from the South. And this is the drinking gourd that they were singing about, has a handle, has a cup on it. And as long as they could find that in the night sky, they knew which direction to go. You know, mostly. I often tell my students, once you know how to find the Big Dipper, now you'll never be lost again. And they laugh because of course it's not true. You still don't know which direction east and west to go, but at least you know where north is, and that is not nothing. So the reason that the Big Dipper is so useful is that if you come from the handle and you go swoop, woo, through the cup, swoop, woo, through the cup, these two stars on the cup point at Polaris, the North Star in the night sky. So once you can find this group of bright stars, you can find Polaris. Polaris sits directly above the Earth's North Pole. It's not the brightest star in the night sky. It's not the reddest star or the bluest star. It's a kind of ordinary run-of-the-mill star in the night sky. It just happens to be in a special spot. So it looks like it stays in the same place all the time. Opposite, here's the Big Dipper. Here's Polaris. Opposite Polaris from the Big Dipper is the W constellation, the Weaver State constellation. Woo, Weaver State, right? It looks like a W in this particular orientation, and this is Cassiopeia. And Cassiopeia, you may have seen the Clash of the Titans, which is all about Perseus and Andromeda and Pegasus, and they go and have adventures, and Medusa and the Gorgon, and it's like very exciting, and all kinds of things happen, right? There's a whole, all those constellations are here in the night sky near Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia was Andromeda's mother. So that's a good constellation to know. You can learn a full story about that just by watching one single movie, which is handy. I picture it as she's a queen, like laying back on her couch in ancient times, like, hey, peel me a grape, right? And she's up on her elbow. And so this is her sharp elbow here. Her knee is kind of cocked halfway off the couch, and she's quite relaxed and really wanting everyone to wait on her, okay? Because she's a queen. Often she's drawn as sitting in a chair, but that doesn't seem as queen-like to me, so I don't picture her that way. I make it up for myself. The constellation I want to tell you about tonight is off towards, at this time of night, the east from Cassiopeia. I want to tell you about this constellation. So this constellation, let me bring it to the fore, and then I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you can see it. It's a very simple constellation. It has this incredibly bright star Vega, which is really noticeable in the night sky. And it has a little parallelogram that looks just exactly like it's a perfect out of a textbook parallelogram in the night sky. And these 5 stars together make up the constellation Lyra. And Lyra is one of my favorite constellations of all the constellations I know. There are 88 constellations in the night sky, and I know stories for about 50 or 60 of them now. But this is one of my favorites. And this is one of my favorites because there are a lot of important objects in this constellation. Probably the most important object is Vega itself. Vega is a really bright star that comes high in the sky here in the northern hemisphere, and all the brightnesses of all the other stars in the sky are judged relative to Vega. So Vega is defined as the 0 of the brightnesses of stars. And so if I want to know how bright is this star, I'm going to find it out relative to Vega. If I want to know how bright is this star, I find it out relative to Vega. And so that's a really important star, right? Scientifically speaking. Where did you put the 0 of brightness of stars? You stuck it at Vega. It was a little bit arbitrary, but the nice thing about it is that it gets quite high in the sky. It's not down near the horizon from where most early telescopes were located, and that made it easier to measure its brightness in our sky. A second object here that's really super important lies between these two stars down here in the parallelogram. So there's this parallelogram and there's two short sides in the parallelogram. The one that's furthest toward the east, between these two stars, there's a little cloud that you can see even in binoculars. You can't quite see it with your eye, but even if you just have like birding binoculars or a spotting scope, you can see a little fuzzy patch here. And if the sky is very dark, right, if you're at North Fork Park, or if you're in southern Utah somewhere, you may even see that it's not filled in fuzzy patch, but it's hollow in the middle. It's a ring. And this object is called the Ring Nebula, M57. And it's a planetary nebula. What that means is it's a star that's dying. And as it's dying, it's ejecting all of its outer layers. And they're coming out and forming a shell around the star that's dying. Why do I think that's so interesting? Because this is how the sun is going to die. It's going to die in this way. But not for 4.5 billion years. So chillax about that. It's okay. Any number of terrible tragedies are going to happen before this happens to the sun. So we don't need to worry about it. It's not something to worry about. But I am really interested. I really want to know, in the future, what is the sun going to do? And this is part of answering that question, is to study this particular object. There's a third object here that you can't see with your eye at all. And that's a particular star that gets bright and faint and bright again. The star's name is RR Lyrae. So the RR tells you you're counting along at the brightnesses of stars that vary, and you get all the way to the R star in the constellation of Lyra. This particular star varies over and over and over again in exactly the same way. And it takes exactly the same amount of time to do it every single time. And that's because the star is pulsating. It's breathing in and out. The rate at which stars of this type do this, how fast they go in and out, depends on how bright they actually are. So we have this mystery. And our mystery is the stars in the night sky, some of them are faint and some of them are bright. Some of them are faint because they're faint, and some of them are faint because they're far away. How do you tell the difference? It's ridiculously hard, is how you do it, right? So it's ridiculously hard to know if any individual given star is faint because it's far, or if it's faint because it just happens to be intrinsically faint. But these particular stars, like RR Lyrae, and it was the first one of this kind known, the time it takes them to get bright and faint again depends on how bright they actually are. So if we see how bright it looks in the night sky, and we know how bright it actually is from measuring how long it takes to change, then we can figure out how far away it is. Magic. Better than magic. It's science, right? So science is better than magic because I can teach it to you, and then you can do it if you want. So why does this matter, how far away the stars are? These RR Lyrae stars are among the first stars that we used to figure out that the Milky Way is separate from other galaxies. When, in about 100 years ago, we figured out how far away these stars were, we realized that there was this enormous empty gap between stars that are close to the sun, inside of the Milky Way galaxy, and stars that are in the Andromeda galaxy. That was an enormous empty space there. And it's fun for me to think about that, because what it means is before we figured that out, our idea of the universe was 1,000,000 times smaller than after we figured that out. So figuring that out grew the universe in our minds, in our idea of it, by a factor of more than 1,000,000. And since then, we've grown it by a factor of about 10 billion. So this is really important star in this particular constellation. So that's 3 science-y objects, right, that connect you to the future. Because we have, how do we measure the brightnesses of stars? We have a star whose particular brightness tells us the size of the entire universe. And we have a star that's dying, which tells us how stars change in time and what the future of the sun looks like. So that seems like a good day's work to me, to learn that about that constellation. That's enough. That's good. Okay. But now let's connect us to the past. I've been thinking a lot about this constellation over the last year or so because the story associated with the constellation is really powerful. And it sits in this kind of area where I think of truths that aren't facts, right? Not all truths are facts. Some things are measurable, but some things are true, emotionally true, or they have a lesson to teach you about behavior, or they have a lesson to teach you about hope or despair, right? So not all truths are facts. So this constellation is the constellation Lyra, and Lyra, it means lyre. It's like a harp, like a small handheld harp. And this particular lyre belonged to Orpheus. And Orpheus was in Greek times, this is an ancient Greek myth that's really quite powerful. It's so powerful that it's been written about a whole bunch of times, tons and tons of paintings. I am going to show you some of those paintings now. So let me make this small. So here is a painting of Orpheus, and he's playing his lyre, his little small harp, which is not quite as parallelogram-y here as it is in the actual night sky. Orpheus was the son of Apollo and the muse Calliope. So he was a great musician, right? Child of a god, he could pretty much do whatever he wanted. And then a muse, well, yeah, he's gonna, if he wants to do music, he's gonna do that really, really well. He was given the golden lyre as a gift when he was a child, and he learned to play it, and he learned to play it incredibly well. He learned to play it so well that he would walk into a forest and he would start playing his lyre, and all the birds would become silent because his song was so much more beautiful than theirs. And he would sit by a stream, and the stream would go silent because his music was more beautiful than the sound of the babbling brook. And he would sit on a mountainside and he would play his lyre, and the wind would stop blowing because his music was more beautiful than the wind in the trees. And so he traveled around making his living, as musicians do, right? Playing music in all kinds of different towns, and then people would throw money at him. So he was making his living traveling around. And one day he was walking through the forest from one town to another, and he came into a glade. And in this glade, there were a lot of wood nymphs, and the wood nymphs were dancing. Now, ordinarily, wood nymphs are very shy, and they hide from everyone. And you know this because you've never seen them. So they must be very shy and hiding from everyone. Otherwise, you would have seen them by now. So the wood nymphs normally do that, but they heard his music as he was walking along the road playing, and it made them start dancing. One of the wood nymphs looked up, saw Orpheus standing at the edge of the glade, and he was struck by the beauty of these wood nymphs, and this one in particular. And her name was Eurydice. Orpheus fell in love with Eurydice, and Eurydice fell in love with Orpheus, in the usual way of Greek myths. So they fell in love, and then they got married, which is not necessarily the ordinary way of Greek myths, but in this case, that's what they did. They got married, and they were married for a very short time. But Eurydice now, because she's married a human, even the son of a god, but still a human, is now moving in the realm of humans. And this turns out to be a little sketchy for her. So at some point, a shepherd sees her, completely falls in love with her otherworldly beauty, and starts to chase her. And she, not quite knowing how to respond to this unwelcome advance, runs away. And she runs through the forest and out into a field, and she steps on a nest of vipers. And one of the vipers whips around, that's a kind of snake, and bites her in the ankle, and she dies. Orpheus is heartbroken, right? Completely heartbroken. He fell in love. He brought this woman into his world, and then she died, and he feels like it was a little bit his fault. So he is now playing only sad music on his lyre. And he's walking from town to town, playing this incredibly sad music. It's like all emo music all the time, everywhere where Orpheus goes, right? And he walks into a town, and all of a sudden the bartenders can't even serve drinks anymore, and the people can't even go to the market anymore, and no one can get out of their bed and get anything done, and all of the chickens are not fed because everyone is so depressed from the music that Orpheus is playing. And Apollo takes note of this, and he's watching, and he's like, okay, he's my son, I get it, he's sad, fine, he's sad, maybe he's gonna come out of it, right? So he waits a little while, and he watches to see if his son's gonna recover from this terrible setback in his life, and he doesn't. He just keeps going around, making everybody sad. So finally Apollo says, I have a thought, and he goes down and he talks to Orpheus, and he says, you know what you need to do? And Orpheus is like, don't talk to me, I'm so sad, I can't deal. And Apollo says, no, listen, no. It's gonna be okay. I have an idea. I have a way for you to solve this. You don't let go of the girl. Come on now. It's not the end of the world. You know where she is. She's in the underworld. She died, so that's where she went. She went down to the underworld where Hades and Persephone are in charge of everything. So what you should do is you should go to the underworld and you should play your lyre for them and try to get her back. And Orpheus says, you think it'll work? Will it work, do you think? And Apollo says, well, Persephone spends half her life in the regular world now and half her life in the underworld because someone begged for her. Maybe it'll work for you. And Orpheus says, well, all right, what have I got to lose, right? No for an answer, I've already got. I might as well go ask Hades if he'll let me have my wife back. So Orpheus makes his way to the underworld, and he plays his lyre for Charon, who is the ferryman of the river Styx. And Charon is supposed to keep all the living people on one side and all the dead people on the other side, but he is so blown away by the incredible music that Orpheus plays that he's like, well, all right, just for you, kid. I'll let you get in the boat. Come on, hide under this thing. We'll go across. They get across the river Styx, and Orpheus runs into the three-headed dog, Cerberus, rawr, right? Very scary three-headed dog. And he plays his music for Cerberus. And Cerberus, one head at a time, drops onto his little paws, and his eyes slowly close, and he goes to sleep. And Orpheus sneaks past him. And Orpheus finally gets to Hades and Persephone, who are in charge of the underworld. And let me show them to you. Here is Hades and Persephone, and I particularly love this painting. Orpheus plays his harp, his lyre, for Hades and Persephone starts crying. And Hades looks at her like, what's wrong with you? This is the expression he's got on his face, like, what? So Persephone is so taken by Orpheus's music that she begs her husband, Hades, to let Eurydice go. And Hades says, well, look, I can't do that. If I do that, everybody is going to be coming to try to get their dead back into the real world again. And then what am I going to do? Like, that's ridiculous. I can't do that. It's going to be a nightmare. Just a total nightmare of people coming and begging all the time. And we're never going to hear the end of it. And it's just terrible. If I do it for one person, I have to do it for everybody. That's just totally not. This is a no-go. And Persephone listens a bit longer to the lyre, and she says, well, maybe if you made it hard. But so let him have his wife back, but make it hard for him to get out. And Hades goes, well, that's all right. Let's make it into a challenge and see if he can meet the challenge. So he sets Orpheus a challenge and he says, here's the deal. You can have her back in the regular world, the sunlit world, if you lead her all the way out past Cerberus, across the river Styx, up the endless stairs, out of Hades, back into the sunlight, and you never look at her until she's back in the sunlight with you. And Orpheus says, well, how hard can that be? Totally good. I got this. No problem. Totally got this. So he starts to lead Eurydice back out of Hades. And they sneak past Cerberus, the three-headed dog, and he plays his lyre to keep him asleep. And then they go to the edge of the river Styx, and he plays his lyre to get passage from Charon back across the river Styx for himself and Eurydice. And he very carefully faces the front of the boat so he doesn't look back and he doesn't see Eurydice. And then he starts climbing the stairs. And he climbs the stairs, and he climbs the stairs, and he climbs the stairs. And when he first starts climbing the stairs, he can hear her feet on the stairs. So he knows she's right behind him. And once in a while he says, hey, you there? And she says, yep. And so he keeps climbing. And he hears her feet on the stairs. And after a little while, he hears her breathing pretty hard behind him because they're climbing the stairs, right? To get out of Hades, it's a long way. And then as he gets close to the sunlight, he can't hear her anymore. The sounds from outside are starting to be louder than her breathing behind him. And he can't hear her feet on the stairs anymore. And he's starting to hear the birds, and he's starting to hear the wind, and he's starting to hear the water in the daylight world. And he can't hear Eurydice behind him anymore. And he's getting nervous. And he's getting more and more nervous. And he says, hey, are you still there? And she can't hear him because of the birds and the wind in the trees. And he's starting to get more and more and more nervous. And Orpheus comes all the way to the top of the stairs, and he puts one foot in the sunlit world, and he thinks, we did it! And he turns around. And she gets taken back into the underworld. Because she wasn't out yet. And he wasn't out yet. He had one foot out in the daylight world, but they weren't done. They were almost done, but not quite. Orpheus lived a while more after that. Some people say that his father eventually just took pity on him. And then when he died, he put his lyre in the sky so that he would always be remembered. Other people say that his music was so sad and so depressing that eventually this group of Furies tore him to pieces and put his lyre in the sky. It goes a couple different ways from that point. But we tell this story now, which goes back thousands of years. This story goes back thousands of years, but we still tell it today when we talk about this constellation, and we still see new art made, new movies, new animations even. I've even seen some manga books that tell this story. Because it's an important truth that's not a fact. That sometimes those last few steps are the hardest steps of all. And I've been thinking about it a lot lately because of the pandemic. Because here we are coming to the end of COVID. We're not quite there yet. And we need to just keep holding on just that little bit longer. And that's the hardest time, when you're almost done. And I've always told this story to my students because sometimes coming all the way to the end of getting to all the way to your college degree, sometimes it's those last few weeks or the last semester that's the hardest to get through, to just keep putting one foot in front of the other like Orpheus should have done, but didn't. So that's the story of this constellation. Lyra, which looks like a little parallelogram in the sky and is attached to some really important stars. And I will stop there and stop sharing. Take questions if you've got them.
So actually, we'll just have Natalie round it off with a couple poems, and then we'll open it up. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them into the chat while Natalie is rounding it off with a couple poems, and then we'll jump into those questions. Thank you so much. Oh, Natalie, you're muted still.
I was gonna say I'm gonna stop my video in the hopes that the sound is a little better. I've been getting some feedback that my technology is not cooperating, so just bear with me. Thank you so much. I love those stories. Maybe 3 more poems where one more moon poem, and then I'll dive right into the others. Warm Moon, March 28th, 2021. Writhing in shimmering compost drum darkness, light paralyzes breathing skin. A contortion of earth and air churning shell and shavings to black gold, bristle and burrow, no bone. Late pandemic, after too much grief, loneliness shook old selves loose like scraps. New self agitates, wingless and wet, bathing in the sound of flight. Split into so many selves I have forgotten, I become myself again. And I love that story so much. I love Greek mythology, and thank you. I could listen to Greek mythology all night. And so I'm gonna actually share a little bit too about the Pleiades. So for starters, Pleiades is a constellation, and it's also called the Seven Sisters. It's an open star cluster, and it's one that is the most obvious to the naked eye. So you've probably seen it, even if you don't know you've seen it. And here goes the myth. In Greek mythology, the Pleiades are the 7 daughters of the Titan god Atlas and the ocean nymph Pleione. So Atlas was taxed with carrying the heavens on his shoulders as punishment because he sided with the Titans in their war against the Olympian gods. And once he was out of the picture, literally carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, the hunter Orion started pursuing his daughters. And so in an effort to protect them, Zeus turned the sisters first into doves and then into stars. It's said that the constellation Orion still chases the 7 sisters across the sky. So the next poem that I'm going to share is written in the Pleiades form. So the rules of this form are only 1 word is allowed in the title. It's got 7 lines for each one for each sister. The first word in every line begins with the same letter as the title, and each line is only 6 syllables. Here we go. Lovers, lift together, wingtip lacework of sun-spun sky. Lateral drifts over larkspur and lake. Neck-long, lavish honks echo home, loud, mile after high mile, lost without the other. And this is the last poem I'll read tonight. Thank you so much, Sunny. It's just been an honor being with everyone. I loved hearing so many cool stories and learned so much. Thank you, Stacy and Jeremy. I didn't know how much I'd miss you. The Cassini spacecraft mission discovered that Saturn's rings are made of shredded moon. So much later after, longer than I thought, fixed in gravitational pull, one lumbering orb, one doomed moon shredded into minuscule wrecks, glowing in the orbit of magnetic memory, around and around and around and
Thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you. And I have also loved hearing the stories and just the evolution that has brought about dark sky parks and what we can do to help invite more dark skies into our lives, and then learning about specific constellations I'd never heard of, Lyra. So that was really exciting. And then having Natalie's beautiful commentary and artwork on top of that. The Humanities in the Wild is a series that Utah Humanities has done to help art and science come together, because they don't work against each other, they really work together, right? And imagination and story, all of those work with science and our understanding of the world and the universe. So thank you, that was perfect. I want to open it up to anyone who is interested in asking a question. You're welcome to drop it in the chat, or if you want to go ahead and just unmute yourself, but we have just a couple minutes for questions if anyone has any to offer. I'll wait for a minute.
I have a question for Jeremy. I want to know which parks he's working on now.
There are more able hands that have continued that legacy. So there's one of the things that that I was involved in, and you were as well, Stacy, the consortium for dark sky studies at the University of Utah really is I think organizing and pushing forward all those efforts. So yeah, so really the things that we've seen over the last few years, I think have come from that really capable body. So so yeah, nothing on my plate personally right now.
That's kind of a good place to be sometimes.
It is.
And then Natalie, I wanted to know if you're continuing this moon project now, or if you have, like, how are you going to decide? This is an interesting question. How do you decide, okay, I'm done now?
Great question. You know, so Sunny and I are in a poetry workshop group, so she's seen all of these and helped me, you know, tighten them up a little bit. I have no idea when
It's such a cool idea, right? What if we could record a slice of our lives each day of a full moon? I just thought it was a brilliant project. So I actually have a question for Stacy. There is one constellation that I can find pretty regularly, and that's the Belt of Orion. But I keep being told that you can only see that one in certain times of the year. Only I swear I have seen it in very different seasons. So I guess you can settle a bet here. Am I right or am I wrong? And I'm willing to be wrong.
Yep. So Orion is so like obvious, right? Like it's so obviously a person. Cultures all over the world see that as a person standing there. You can see Orion for like 9 months of the year. High summer, you can't. But for roughly at different times of night, you can see it from September all the way through till just about March. So
that one's my party trick. That's like the only one I can pull out, is that it is so obvious.
Yep.
It's a fun one.
It's delightful. And I can tell you something cool to say about Orion. So under the belt of Orion, there's like a sword that hangs down, and there's 3 bright dots there. The middle one is actually a star forming region. So stars are being born right there in that middle one. And if you get binoculars, you can see it's fuzzy. And then Betelgeuse, which means armpit of the giant, it's his right shoulder, is a star that's about to die. It's totally at the end of its life. So right there in Orion, you have stars being born and stars dying, and then lots and lots of stars just like in middle age of stars doing middle-aged things, getting up in the morning and fusing hydrogen into helium, right? So, so I love Orion for that reason. You can see that stars are born and they live and they die. And that's a profound thing to realize.
And to witness. Thank you. That's beautiful. Any other questions? Anyone from the audience? You're welcome to unmute or drop anything in the chat. Okay, I think we just had such a mesmerized audience. People have said thank you and gotten a lot out of it. And I hope this has helped people prep for good places to view constellations and maybe some background of things that we hadn't heard before, right? So that I think they're a lot more meaningful if we know the story behind a constellation. And then understanding that art comes from these beautiful moments of observation. And I love that Natalie takes these facts, right? And these scientific facts, and then she spins them against the personal. And there are no barriers that way, right? We're so informed and so enriched by things in the world around us and by science. So thank you so much. Thank you to Utah Humanities again for all that they do and all that they've done for this event and continue to do for other Humanities in the Wild and other events. So a huge thank you to Stacy, Jeremy, and Natalie. This was so enlightening and just so enriching. And I hope everyone goes out tonight. It's getting dark now, so soon you'll be able to go out and identify some of these wonderful constellations and think about what you can do to take that into your life. So thank you so much for being here to everyone, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, Sunny.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you.